Welcome everyone to Cybersecurity Nonprofit's June webinar, the top 5 security awareness mistakes based on behavioral science with Abdul Rahman Elshafei. We're so excited to have you with us tonight. Thank you so much.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me, Marta.
I'm just going to give a quick introduction of Cybersecurity Nonprofit and then let Abdul take it away. So Cybersecurity Nonprofit is a nonprofit organization that empowers our community through inclusive and accessible cybersecurity awareness, education, and exploration. These are our 4 columns. 1, inclusive education. So we want to provide cybersecurity education resources to a diverse group of people and really break down the barriers in our industry. 2, cybersecurity awareness. We want to help people increase their cyber safety knowledge and awareness to keep themselves safe and to keep their families safe. 3, diversity, equity, inclusion. So we want to promote DEI in cybersecurity and technology fields. And 4, exploration. So we really want to support, encourage, and lead innovation and exploration in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity Nonprofit hosts a lot of events throughout the year. Every month we do a presentation such as this one. We also host workshops and hackathons, panel discussions, and stay tuned this summer. We will host a trivia game. We'll be hosting more interactive activities to get you really engaged in cybersecurity. Our website has a lot of great content, and best of all, it's free. We have a blog post every Monday on all sorts of topics for all levels. We have blogs about starting your cybersecurity career. We have cyber safety, threat hunting, AI, chat, GPT, and more. We also have career resources. How do you get that first job? What should you study? And what are the different areas of cybersecurity? We also have a wonderful cyber safety program that helps people become security aware, help keep their family safe, help keep their kids safe. We also have boot camps as well. And here are some upcoming events. So our next webinar is July 17th with Naomi Buckwalter. If you're starting your cybersecurity career, she is someone you definitely want to follow. And we're going to do something a little bit different where you will decide what she will talk about. So please use that SurveyMonkey link to vote or to write in what you would like Naomi to speak about at our July webinar. This summer, we are also hosting a one-day boot camp for middle schoolers. We've created some really good content to help them introduce them to cybersecurity and safety. We're going to have a trivia game in August, and in September, we'll have a backdoors and breaches game that is an incident response card game. It's really fun. There are a lot of ways to get involved in cybersecurity nonprofit, and here to the right are the links. You can become a member of cybersecurity nonprofit. You can volunteer with us. There's a lot of different roles from marketing to business, content creation. You don't have to have experience in cybersecurity, and it's really good it looks good on your resume to volunteer. If you're a student, if you're switching over, you can also submit a blog, give a presentation like this one. You can also donate to CSNP, sponsor us, or partner with us. I'm going to leave this slide up here for a minute so we can say thank you to our sponsors and our partners. Donations from our sponsors allow us to continue to host high-quality events, and we have a variety of sponsorship opportunities, including providing a venue, hosting the event, or becoming an annual sponsor. And we also have partnership opportunities with different benefits as well. So I'm gonna leave this up here to thank our sponsors. And we also we love donations as well. You can donate on our website. Any amount is good. We'll take it. So your donations keep membership to cybersecurity nonprofit free, and it funds our educational webinars, our hackathons, as well as community outreach programs to help educate people in underserved communities, women and BIPOC. We really want to increase representation and diversity in cybersecurity. We also help small businesses and nonprofits protect themselves from cyber threats as well. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Here is our contact information. We appreciate feedback. We appreciate you guys. Please follow us on Meetup, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter to stay tuned for future events. So I'm really excited to have Abdul with us tonight. He, spoiler alert, this is a visually stunning presentation. So Abdul is a 3-time recipient of the Microsoft's Most Valuable Professional MVP Award in consumer security for his technical contributions and community engagements in Windows security. His expertise in cybersecurity started in 2005, and by 2007, he was a contributing author for the book Rootkits for Dummies. In the past 3 years, he was the Chief Security Awareness Advisor for over 36 government organizations and large corporations. I just want to thank you for presenting with us today. And really quick, we will save all the questions for the end. You can type in your questions in the Q&A. And if you want to send over your security awareness statements or images, he will also be live critiquing them at the end. So without further ado, give it to Abdul.
Thank you for having me, Marta. I'm glad to be here. My name is Abdurrahman, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I just want to say not really a small thank you, but a really big thank you for taking your time for joining us for this session. Sorry, for this session. My name is Abdurrahman Elshafei. Just call me Abdul for short. My information is up here. Marta has already introduced some of the information right here. I'm also a certified professional trainer from the business school at the University of Toledo. As she mentioned, I have received the Microsoft Most Valuable Professional Award 3 times from Microsoft headquarters. And at the time when I received this award, there was only 125 people worldwide have received this award, and I was lucky to be one of them. I'm also a contributing author for Rootkits for Dummies. I'm not a co-author, a contributing author. So you'll see me mentioned in the author's acknowledgement page. I'm a contributing author for the 4th chapter of this book. For anybody who does not know, haven't heard about Rootkits, it's a type of malware that originated from Linux, but it was very, very popular at the time of Windows XP. It's not that popular right now. So a lot of information of this book is considered to be out of date. So I have volunteered. I was a visiting instructor at Dell support forums, especially with things related to the virus and spyware support. Also, I was a visiting instructor at Bleeping Computer, and I was a security expert and a rootkit expert at Castle Cop Security Professionals. This is a nonprofit security organization. Unfortunately, it was shut down about 15 years ago. The owner was hired by Microsoft, and there was a conflict of interest between Microsoft, his work with Microsoft, and his volunteer organization. What Castle Cop's organization, this nonprofit organization, had representatives from all different types of antiviruses companies, from Avira, Kaspersky, Symantec, representatives from Microsoft, even FBI, from Anti-Phishing Working Group. And there was a lot of perks volunteering in this organization. I used to receive personal gifts directly from the CEO of Not32, personal gifts from Panda Antivirus and so on. So unfortunately, it was shut down. I'm also a business writer. I wrote for the Entrepreneur magazine. This is a business magazine that headquartered in California, United States. I have contributions, things related to sales and psychology, environment, working environment, and so on. So what this session is about, it's how this is formatted is we're going to talk about 5 studies from the behavior sciences. And then we'll talk about the mistakes that security professionals do based on those behavior sciences studies. And what behavior science is, it's a generic term that encompasses everything that's related to social psychology, behavior economics, neuroscience, cognitive science, even parts of sociology as well. So how the mistakes are ordered, mistakes that when I talked about to correct with the security professionals to correct them. I'll talk about this first mistake where I have received the least amount of resistance to correct. And at the end, we'll talk about the 5th mistake where there is almost 100% type of resistance. And I'll explain why companies resist to fix such a mistake. So we'll start with the first study. This study is about the knowledge intention behavior gap. This is also known as the knowledge attitude behavior gap, is also known as the knowledge carrying practices gap, or the value action gap. This is a study that started at Yale University, and Yale University wanted, at that time, they wanted the students to take the tetanus vaccine. And what they did, they provided different types of messages for the students, and to convince them to take the tetanus vaccine at the University Health Services Center. And the target demographics were senior students at the university at their last year. So the first booklet, the first group of students received a booklet that talks about the importance of tetanus vaccine and told them it's for free at the University Health Services Center. And since there's senior students, they already know where the University Health Services is. They're not targeting first-year students. No, these are their last 4th year at the university. And the second group of students, they told them the importance of tetanus vaccine, but they also included some types of emotions. They also included images, graphical images, photos of people who did not take the tetanus vaccine and what happened to them, stories about people who did not take the tetanus vaccine. And then later on, once they gave those two group of students those booklets, they asked them a week later, they gave them a questionnaire, and this questionnaire asked them how much information they recalled, what are their attitudes towards the tetanus vaccine, and their intentions of taking the tetanus vaccine. So obviously, the second group performed a lot more better than the first group. They recalled a lot more information. They remember more information. They had greater intentions and so on. And this is consistent with a book called Made to Stick, and I greatly recommend everybody to read this book. It's authored by Chip and Den Heath. They are two psychology professors at the Stanford University. And what they want, this book is about studying what makes messages stick to people's mind and what messages people would forget. For example, let's say, for example, a myth or hoax, common people that people spread all around. For example, people remember 10% of their brain. Why is this information people tend to remember it? And why would a mathematical equation they're taught at school and 5 minutes later you just completely forget about it? And they came up with 6 principles. What these shared principles, what would make these messages stick to people's mind? And the first principle is simplicity. The second principle is credibility. People need to trust the source of information that is coming from. The third principle is unexpectedness. There should be some kind of surprise element. And a lot of YouTube clickbait titles is based on that principle, surprise or shock. The fourth element is concreteness, not just abstract a message, but concreteness. And one way to deliver concreteness is giving an example or showing a photo or an image or steps. The fifth element or first principle of sticky message is a story. Story immediately grabs our attention. If you're watching a presentation live and once the presenter starts telling a story, all of a sudden you'll find a lot of people they want to pay attention to and hear about the story. Now, of course, that is one thing. The last thing is emotions. Emotions, if you recall the most memorable experiences that you had in your life, is probably an experience that had some kind of heightened emotions, and emotions are contagious. So let's wrap up the 6 principles that made it to stick. One of them is simplicity, credibility, unexpectedness, concreteness, story, and emotions. So, but there's a problem. 1 month later, they actually checked on those students who received those two booklets and see what percentage of those students actually took the tetanus vaccine at the University Health Services Center. So the first group is only 3% of those students took the tetanus vaccine. How about the second group? This is going to be a surprise for everybody because the second group, also 3% of the students took the tetanus vaccine. So there's a gap between what people know and their intentions, and there's a gap between what their attitudes and their action. That's why it's called the knowledge, intention, behavior gap. Now, there's a lot of so despite the students cared more about the tetanus vaccine, and they actually wrote that they intend to take the vaccine machine, but they did at the end results, the action that they did at the end did not make much of a difference. So I'll give you a real example. There's many examples of the knowledge, attention, behavior gap. For example, things related to smoking, things related to eating healthy, things to exercising. Let's say, for example, smoking. Actually, most of the smokers, or 100% of the smokers, know that smoking is bad for them. But what percentage of those smokers have the intention that they want to quit? That's one gap. The second gap, so the knowledge is there, but the intention is not there. But there's a second gap. How many of those smokers who intend to leave, to quit, they actually started taking the treatment plan, the action plan to start quitting from their smoking habits? So this is briefly explains the knowledge, intention, behavior gap. So the Yale University, they gave a third group of students a message that includes the importance of tetanus vaccine, emotions, graphical images, stories. They also include 2 additional information. One of them is a map that circled where the University Health Service is located and the timings when the shot should be taken. Now, this map is not going to add additional information because these students already know where the University Health Service is located, but they added it as an action plan for the students to go where to go to take the tetanus vaccine. So 1 month later, when they observed those third group of students, they found out that 28% of the students actually took the vaccine. So those 2 small information difference. Malcolm Gladwell, the author of Tipping Point, actually commented on this particular issue. He said the addition of the map and the times when the shots were available shifted the booklet from an abstract lesson in medical risk to a practical piece of medical advice. And once advice became practical and personal, it became memorable. So that makes a big difference. So what is the most common mistake that security professionals do? First thing, they assume that people already know, even if it's something that's very obvious. And now I'm going to talk about demonstrate here documented boozosity. That's in the terms and the words of Guy Kawasaki, some really documented boozosity. Now I'm going to start with my first boozosity that I actually did. This is a poster that I wrote, not particularly designed. And when I started my career in developing security awareness messages, and this is way before COVID and when everybody was working at their offices. Now, notice this poster is about people asking employees to report when an employee who's not authorized to access a restricted location. Now, it says here report it immediately. It doesn't say. And that's a big mistake because it doesn't say who to report it, how to report it, and where to report it. So is it the help desk? Is it the receptionist? Is it the security guard? Is it the physical security department? Is it the IT security department? So this rendered the entire poster useless. There's no action plan. There's no concrete action plan what to do. Here's a second example. This is not something that I made. This is one of my clients, and I censored out anything that's related to my client. And they made this poster about phishing with a V, not with a P, which is phishing phone calls. And if you receive a suspicious phone call that's trying to solicit some type of confidential information, then you need to report it to the IT security department. Now, the IT security department, that is not enough. You need to add either an email address or a phone number, or tell them where the IT security department is located. Is it at the second office on the 3rd floor on the right? Is it or a type of Slack link? It doesn't specify how they could report the incident to the IT security department. Again, this is going to render the action of what you want the people to do useless. So we're going to go to the second study about concreteness ambiguity. This study was done at Stanford University. Stanford University wanted to encourage students to participate in a food drive, to volunteer and donate food at at Trusted Plaza. Trusted Plaza at Stanford University is the student center. Everybody knows where the student center is. And again, this study was targeted towards senior students in their last year. So the first group of messages they sent to the students was, dear student, so a generic salutation. There's a food drive next week, just donate food at Trusted Plaza. That's it. So that was a big letter. And at the end, 4% of the students actually participated in the food drive. The second group of students, they actually wrote their names, dear Abdul, for example, food drive next week, and they specified what exactly to bring in the food drive. We want canned beans, our canned goods, actually it's canned beans. We want 2, and I want you to send it to the at the booth at Trusted Plaza. And here's a map circled exactly where the student center is, despite everybody knows them. And I think probably the timing too, but I can't recall that. And in this case, 34% of the students participated, and that is an 8% increase in compliance rates. So the common mistake here with regard to security awareness is that a lot of security awareness messages, they use subjective abstract messages. And abstract messages without a concrete action plan is something that is harder to understand. It's harder to remember. It's also harder to convince people, influence people to behave in a certain way. And a lot of behavior scientists, they say resistance to change is often due to lack of clarity. And there's most of the security awareness messages that I've seen worldwide has a lack of clarity. Chip and Dan Heath, the two Stanford University psychologists, they authored a book called Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard, and have an entire chapter that's called Script the Critical Moves. Now I'm going to summarize this chapter in a few words. If they said, if you want people to change, you must provide crystal clear direction. So in this case, what you need to do is show a line of action. The first thing is give users specific actionable information that will guide them exactly what they should do. So avoid any kind of abstract messages. The second thing is use concrete language. Concrete languages helps people, especially novices, understand new concepts. So it is not only novices. So a lot of us security experts probably we actually write our messages in a way that assume that the other end knows, but a lot of non-tech savvy people, they don't really understand what you're supposed to do here. And I'm going to show real examples and to explain these two concepts. So generally, if you want to change people's behavior, you need to remove any kind of ambiguity in your message and need to use any kind of concrete message. So there's 2 indicators of a poor messaging. The first indication, if your message would lead to more questions than answers. So you could, these are 2 rules. You can apply them in any kind of security message. And the second thing is it's subjective. People will interpret the message in different ways. If that happens, then there's a problem with your message. And I'll show you real examples on this. So here's some documented buzzosity. The first example is, again, this is from one of my clients, and I censored my client's name here. And it's talk about asking people how to browse the internet safely. And they have a message, for example, only download software from sites you trust. Now, how do I know what sites sites are trustworthy or not? For example, I'll give you a personal experience that happened to me once I started my career in cybersecurity back in 2005. When I started that career at that time, there was it was very popular. People were using peer-to-peer, P2P file sharing programs. And the 2 most popular file sharing programs was Kazaa and LimeWire. These 2 programs, anybody who has those 2 programs will definitely have their computer infected. Kazaa is known to spread malware, and the files on those 2 programs are most likely infected. Actually, 90% of them are affected. Now, at that time, my sister was in high school. And I told her, once I told her about Kazaa and LimeWire, that these are not safe programs to use or any particular peer-to-peer, she was completely baffled about this. And the reason that she was completely baffled about this is because everyone at school, probably even teachers, not only students, and are using Kazaa on LimeWire. And it's a social norm. It's culturally accepted. And if you're not using it, you're probably socially detached from their classmates. So basically, if I just give out this message, only download software from their trust, and people such as my sister at that time and her classmates see this message, it won't make much of a difference to them because they're using already. Their approach of how to download software is completely incorrect, and this is for them. Using peer-to-peer is something trustworthy because there's social proof and everybody's using it. So this is a message that is not going to help people, especially people who are vulnerable, who have bad browsing habits. That's not going to help them. It's probably going to help somebody who is a security professional like myself and others who understand what trust here means. Here's another real example. This is from the Department of Homeland Security, CISA, and this is the 4 steps how to be safe online. And let's look at one of the examples here. Think before you click. Now, assume that I am so motivated and I want to learn more about thinking before clicking. So I go to open the web link and I scroll through this long article to understand what thinking before you click. And at the end, this is what I get. If it's a link you don't recognize, trust your instincts and think before you click. We all need to fight the fish. Now, first of all, it's all a link you don't recognize. That's going to lead to more questions and answers. Trust your instincts is something that is subjective. And think before you click. If I'm not thinking, I'm probably dead. So this kind of message is not going to help someone who's already vulnerable to this kind of mistakes. So there's one solution that I learned from digital marketing, as well as content marketing, is something called the Grandma test. This is something I did not come up. This is actually on the Forbes. The Grandma test are explaining what you do in a way that makes sense. So basically, you need to, once you're done with your messaging, you need to ask someone who is significantly different than you. It could be someone significantly different for you in age. It's not necessarily your grandma, but that's a good idea if you ask your grandma. It could be your children, your niece, nephews. It could be someone like your neighbor or a high school classmate who has pursued a career and became a professional chef or plumber. Why did you ask them? What did you understand? That's the first question. And what will you do differently? Now, what will you do differently? That means after what I used to do before, and after I read this message, now this is what I'm going to do differently. So let's say, for example, you have a message such as do not click on links that you do not trust, that are not trustworthy. And you ask a person, and that person responds to you, look, this message is quite clear. To me, I don't trust, let's say, a country that exists today called the Nazi Republic. I don't trust anything that comes from the Nazi Republic. And if I see an email or a link to a browser that comes from that geography domain, then I know it's not trustworthy. I'm not going to click on it. But I received a personal message from Jeff Bezos, and he sent me an email. He said, "Look, I'm giving you for free a $100 coupon on Amazon." And this guy is so sweet. I never knew Jeff Bezos is so generous, and he's so kind and sweet to give me such kind of information by email. I feel so lucky. I'm clicking on that immediately. Then you know that this person has understood your messages incorrectly and you have a problem with your messaging. If that is the kind of response you get, that's a big issue. So let's go to the third study. This was done at Johns Hopkins University. And at Johns Hopkins University, they they made a study, and they found that across the United States, people who are admitted to the IC unit, there's about, on average, 80,000 infections per year just from the IC unit. I'm not talking about checking in, operations, or anything else. Just from the IC unit, 80,000 infections, people get infected from the IC units across the United States. So the Center of Disease Control United States, they issued a guideline. And this guideline is 160 pages long with 95 recommendations. Now, I could go through the doctors, we could ask the doctors and nurses, go through this guideline, as well as the administrators, and let's fix this issue. But there's a doctor called Provost. He actually took the top 5 recommendations that would have the maximum impact on infection rates at the IC units, and he compiled them in a small size leaflet, 5 steps, summarized them, and he gave them away to every doctor and nurses at Johns Hopkins University. And some of them are really obvious. For example, the first one, wash your hands with soap and water or an alcohol cleanser whenever a patient is admitted to the ICU. Now, that doesn't require, despite this is given to doctors, this does not require 4 to 10 years of medical school education, but it's something to remind them. And these are the top 5 important steps, despite their simplicity. And that's all what the administration of Johns Hopkins University asked the doctors and patients to do. And the hospital found out that this made a huge impact. Just by following those 5-step checklist, it made a huge difference. So Dr. John Provost, he wanted to implement this on the larger scale. So he started with Michigan State. He applied the 5-step, those 5-step checklist with 85% or the majority of hospitals in Michigan State, and see the results. After 1.5 years, he found that this few words, those 5 steps, have saved $175 million in costs and 1,500 lives within 18 months. And this is from one state. So that made a huge difference. So what that means is that in security awareness is that what the problem is with security awareness, we overwhelm people with a lot of security awareness training. And you need to focus on what is important or think on topics that would make the biggest difference. You don't want to overwhelm them with do that and do this on a constant basis. So there's 2 ways to do this. How to focus on what is crucially important. The first thing is ignore what can be automated and focus what can be controlled. There's a book called Transformational Security Awareness. I highly recommend everybody to read this book by Perry Carpenter from KnowBe4. And he says in this book, if you're relying on your end user to think about encrypting documents, remembering to enable VPN services and so on, then it's time to take a good look at automating those behaviors. Doing so will free you and your users to focus more intently on the groups of behaviors that can be automated. So if I want my users to use VPN and their machines are connected to the Active Directory of my company, then I could push the VPN installation on those PCs silently, and it will work automatically without need to educate them on those type of controls. And I could focus on what the IT department cannot control and to educate them about, such as phishing emails, because one way or another, phishing emails will bypass your spam filters. It could be things related to clean disk policy, because you're not going to have who's going to stand in front and monitor the desk of every employee and make sure that they don't have their private information or classified information left on the disks, writing the passwords on their desktop, on a sticky note, and so on. So there probably is something that's beyond your control. You could focus on that. If something you cannot control, for example, malware being spread through USB drives. If you can't control this, probably you may need to educate them. If something you can control through the Active Directory, through your IT department, yes, you can definitely. If you can control that, then you don't have to. You can focus on more important issues with your with your employees. One personal experience that I had, I was consulting a high-profile government agency, a government office, and that office, they don't allow people bringing their own devices to their to work. So all the devices are connected to Active Directory, are inside the network, inside the office physically, and it's connected to Active Directory. Now they want to secure their systems more even more, and they were concerned about viruses spreading through USB through USB thumb drives or any kind of USB device. One way we can give a security awareness session to those government representatives, or we could go to the Active Directory, add a Windows registry control that would automatically disable the USB ports. Even if somebody brings a USB device, infected or not, it would not run. Nothing is going to run. So that is one option to do. So encryption, you can have a software control that once an employee saves a file as a particular folder, it would encrypt it automatically. You don't have to ask them to encrypt it yourself. So Cofense, they have a little bit more extreme views on this, but I do agree with them. They have an article called "For Effective Security Awareness, Keep It Focused," and they say, for example, things related to password security. Having a secure password is a vital element of security. We all agree, but teaching employees why complex passwords are important is both unnecessary and a waste of time, since even the most effective password training won't be better than a technical control. They do have a point, but it's a bit extreme, but they do have a point, because all the websites, or most of the websites, they already ask the users to input they won't accept any kind of password unless it meets a complex password requirement. So, but how about if people, how about employees? They want the employees to protect, to change the default password of their routers at home, their home computers. They want to add a Windows account password. These cannot be controlled technically. So again, this may be applicable at home office, but if I'm going to educate users at home, it's a little bit extreme. They still need to know how to effectively password protect their devices. So, but if I'm focusing what they may hear, if I'm an IT professional concerned about protecting my own network, and I already have a technical control for that, then let's focus on more things that I can control over my employees. The second thing that you could focus on cutting down information is to cut down anything that is nice to know but useless information. And I'll explain that. I'm gonna bring up some documented buzzosity to explain this. This is from one of my clients. A client I had, they had 5,000 employees. They made a security awareness booklet. They gave it away to all of their 5,000 employees. And this is information they added. Things, of course, I censored my client's name. And they added things like they say, I tried. Why would this is something that is probably good to know, but it's completely useless for end users. The say I tried was made for security professionals and how to devise or design policies to secure their organizations. It has nothing to do for teaching employees how to browse safely on the internet, or how to become more cyber safe at home. So this is basically useless information. I'll give you an analogy. If you're sick, you have a disease and you're going to the doctor will give you two pieces of information. The first information, what medication you need to take, how to take them, and what precautionary measures you should take to prevent the disease from coming. He's not going to be overly excited about what he learned in medical school and start teaching you in the clinic about an anatomy, about molecular biology, pharmaceutical chemistry. He's not going to teach you all about that. Despite that, this is good to know information. Sure, knowing about anatomy is good to know, but it's useless. Once if you have the disease and you follow what the doctor said, the medication, the preventive measures, then you'll be as healthy as a doctor himself. There's no difference at the end. So basically, this is a lot of useless information. You should cut it down and focus exactly what employees or the users need to know and why. So the fourth study is about done with Harvard University, and this is back in 1979. Harvard University, they made a study at an office building. Regarding people using the photocopier machine. In 1979, if you want to share a file, it's very difficult to share a file digitally. So if I want to share a file with somebody, I have to go to the photocopier and make copies of the file that I want to share. So there used to be long queues at the photocopier machine, and they want to know, the experimenter wanted to know if I can skip the line and I can make copies right away without needing to wait in line. So the first type of message the experimenter use is, may I use a Xerox machine? And 60% of the people complied. They agreed, yeah, go ahead. And so he had to, so 60% agreed that this guy can skip the line. Now, how about if he gave a reason? May I use a Xerox machine because I'm in a rush? In this case, the majority of the people agreed, 94% of the people agreed that he can skip the line and go ahead and use a Xerox machine. Now, the experimenters, they speculated that just the existence of the word because is sufficient enough to influence people to act in a certain way. So they want to say because, but they want to end the sentence. So they just, to end the sentence, they added any kind of meaningless excuse, because I have to make copies. So they give up a meaningless rationale, and in fact, 93% of the people complied. So it does prove that just using the word because is enough that people would be comply with the request that you're making. But here's a caveat. This was only made for 5 copies. It's a simple task. It's something that's not going to take too much time. But how about if a person was asking for 20 copies? Kind of copies means I need to wait longer. Everybody is going to get frustrated, and you want to skip line because of something, a large task to do. So once they asked the control message, may I use a Xerox machine? Only less than a quarter of people agreed that he can skip the line to do 20 copies. Now, the second message, may I use a Xerox machine because I'm in a rush? So there's a rational reason why I need to do copies, and about 48, less than half of the people agreed. Now, what happens if I use a meaningless reason? Now, here's the difference. If I use a meaningless reason because I have to make copies, then 24%, it dropped back to 24% of people agreed. So we're here giving any kind of reason is not enough for a large task to do. So the difference is that, so this goes with the notion that everybody knows the more difficult the task or the more time-consuming the task, the more I need to be more motivated. And there's a common mistake here by security professionals, and that they don't give any kind of strong reason to convince the end user or the employee to act in a certain manner. There's a book called Yes, 50 scientifically proven ways to be persuasive by Robert Cialdini. He's a psychology professor at Arizona State University. And he says, always be sure to accompany a request with a strong rationale, even when you think the reasons might be fairly clear. So I'll show you some documented buzzosity. The first example here is from Miami University. And they have a message, for example, avoid free public Wi-Fi networks. Now, I went to their link to find more information about this. They gave zero, absolutely zero reasons why you should avoid the public Wi-Fi network. Now, if a person such as, let's say, an executive or a frequent flyer or a salesperson and sees such kind of message, he will say, look, I already paid a lot of money for that airplane ticket, and I feel entitled that I should use a public Wi-Fi at the airport or the plane. Why would I not use a public Wi-Fi network? Same thing goes with somebody goes to a hotel. I already paid for the hotels and paid for that hotel, and it includes part of the hotel services includes a Wi-Fi network that I rightfully use. So why you're telling me not to avoid free public Wi-Fi network? Same thing with Starbucks. I'm going for my morning coffee and I feel entitled to use their public Wi-Fi network. So again, if you're not giving any kind of any reason, that's completely useless. The last study here is the impact of color. There's a book, again, back to the book, Transformational Security Awareness. Perry Computer says, colors serve a much greater purpose than just being pretty. Colors imply meaning, can evoke emotions, and help establish context. He's absolutely right, because there's a book called Webs of Influence, The Psychology of Online Persuasion. It's a digital marketing book by Natalie Nahi. She's actually a clinical psychologist. She calls herself a web psychologist. And she says, color might subconsciously prime and influence people's behaviors and motivations, which can come in handy if applied deliberately to design. And I'll give you two examples. I'm not going to go deep into the color psychology and how colors affect our perceptions. I'm just going to give two quick examples. One example is from a book called Psychology of Advertising by Nick Golenda. He says, we usually associate red with dangers, threats, and mistakes. Because of those associations, red activates an avoidance mindsets. With that mindset activated, people identify problems more quickly and easily. Now, I'm not saying here you need to use red for your security awareness messages. This is just an example. Again, there's a lot of colors you can use in different contexts, in different demographics, kids, senior citizens, the type of employees, the type of industry you're in, but this is just an example. Another example from Webs of Influence, where Natalie says, as a basic rule of thumb when it comes to design, the higher a color saturation, the higher the level of excitement, whether good or bad, it elicits. Now, I'll bring up some common mistakes that security professionals do, or regarding the security awareness messages that our organization use, is some things related to design colors and brand identity. Now, I'm going to show you documented buzzosity that I personally experienced to explain this more in details. I had a client. It's a government agency. They had an office building with 2,000 employees, and they wanted a roll-up displayed at the lobby, at the entrance of the lobby of this building, on phishing emails. So as employees enter the lobby, go to their offices, they could see this roll-up. So I proposed an idea with their graphics design team, and I told them, look, I need something that would grab their attention, such as a stop sign. And I made a sketch. You could consider this, what you see right now on the screen, as a napkin sketch. And at the bottom part of the roll-up talks about what utility should look at in their phishing emails and what they should do. And the graphics team actually designed something completely different. This is what they designed. It's completely, to me, that's completely absurd. Why would you design a roll-up that would blend with the walls of your offices? It has no type of attention. Nothing, you could say, nothing like, not only will grab their attention, but it will stand out from their environment. They actually said that that's because they need to comply with their corporate identity. Now, this is a problem with actually most of the clients that I experience. They need to comply, their design needs to comply with their corporate identity, and that's a big issue. Now, I actually talked to them. Hey, can I speak to the whichever department is responsible for the corporate identity? It could be the public relations department, the media and communications department. It could be the marketing department. Let's say it's called they call it the branding department. Can I speak to the branding department? Because I have some background in experience in management consultant, and I'm qualified enough to talk to their branding department. They said, no, you're hired here to help the IT security team. You're not here to talk with other departments, especially things related to public relations. So this is why this is something I encountered almost 100% resistance to change how they design their security awareness messages. And I'll talk, and they're actually wrong about this. And I'll explain why their branding department is, the perception of how their designs is incorrect. I'll go back to the pioneer of branding identity. His name is Marty Neumeyer, and he was responsible for the branding identity of Apple in the early 1980s, Microsoft, HP, and even Google. He authored a book called The Brand Gap: How to Bridge the Distance Between Business Strategy and Design. And he actually says, first of all, a brand is not a logo. A logo or any other kind of trademark is not the brand itself. It's merely a symbol of it. Fine, great. And then he goes on and he says, second, a brand is not a corporate identity system. Today, there's still a need for identity manuals and the visual consistency bring, but consistency alone does not create a brand. Okay, now here's the most important thing that I need to bring your attention to. Then he continues on and says, unlike the old corporate identity paradigm that prizes uniformity and consistency, the new brand paradigm sacrifices those qualities in favor of being alive and dynamic. That's exactly what we need to do in our security awareness messages. We need to be alive and dynamic. We need to grab people's attention. And that's not going to contradict with their brand identity. Now, so to keep you not hanging, so what is a brand? Martin Neumeyer responds to that and says, a brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or company, is what others people say about your brand, not what you say about it. So I'll wrap up. The reason that I talked about colors in particular is because it's a part of a bigger issue of design. So again, it's an issue with designing our security awareness messages. I brought the example of colors, and there's a lot of things related to design, and there's a lot of scientific studies related to design, things related to text placement, fonts, the headline, visuals, clip arts, and so on. These type of the visuals would differ. It has an impact depending on your demographics and your target audience. Now, this is something that is beyond the scope of us as security professionals. You need to consult a UX designer or user-centered designer, probably graphics designer, and if you have an advertising team, they're the best in how to design, to guide your graphics design team, the best way to how to address a message according to the your target audience. So I'm gonna wrap up this presentation with the conclusion here. This is a security awareness message that's been circulated on LinkedIn. Everybody's sharing it. Different government organizations worldwide have embraced this poster, but they added their own logos to it. And this poster includes messages such as, be careful what you click. How do I become careful? What does that mean? How do I, and things related to lock your devices when not in use. Sorry, I highlighted the wrong one. Only install apps and software from trusted sources. What does trusted sources mean? Where are the trusted sources? Verify with whom you are interacting online. How do I verify the person I'm interacting online? Is it what does that mean too? And so you'll see almost every type of message that you see here has a question mark. It leads to more questions than answers, and it's probably subjective. So these type of messages, you will lose your audience immediately. You'll lose the engagement from your target, from your employees or the end users, and actually may have a negative impression about your IT security department, about your security awareness program and campaigns, because of how you message them. So it's not about the way we deliver our security messages. It's more about, we need to rethink more about how we message our security awareness and how we design them. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to open it up for questions and answers. And if you have any kind of security awareness message that you would like me to critique, please upload them into that chat system or in the Q&A if the Q&A allows you to do so. The first question here is there credibility to the idea of different brain types, such as more receptive to facts and another brain type, more receptive emotional connections? I first read about this in a book called A Whole New Mind by Dan Pink. He separated the left brain and right brain. He talks about the left brain is more emotional, the right brain is more logical. I don't know. We need to ask a brain scientist about this. I read another book from a brain scientist from the University of Washington. It's called Brain Rules, and he never talks about separating the brain into different areas. But again, definitely, but I think there's some truth to this, that there are some parts of the brain that controls your emotions or not. I'll say personal experience. I have epilepsy, and I take medication for epilepsy, and it does say in the paper note, the medication note, that it does change your mood. So I don't know. So this is something you need to ask a psychologist about this. We know that.
So I think we know the US has a lack of cybersecurity. Why they don't simplify the way people learn how to do it?
That's why I'm doing this session. I'm baffled about this. That's why I'm bringing examples from the Department of Homeland Security, things from universities, even from my own clients. Why aren't they not simplifying it? Is a mystery to me too, and that's why I'm doing this session. I need to be, and there's books such as Transformational Security Awareness by Perry Carpenter, that this is a major issue that is not limited to the United States. It's an issue worldwide, and all of the security awareness and messages that I've seen has this issue. Can we get a list of books? Everything that I covered in this session is not in a book, unfortunately. I'll start with, for example, the first study. Is from, you could read it in a book. The Yale University is from Tipping Point, but Tipping Point doesn't talk anything about cybersecurity. It was authored back in 1999, I believe. So how it is related to cybersecurity is something that you need to do yourself. I don't think there's much about a lot of books and how to relate behavior science of what is the best practice, or giving any kind of visual examples and what is wrong, what is right. If you want to have a start, as a head start, you can start with Rootkits for Dummies. A lot of information that I covered in this workshop is probably covered in more than 7 books. So I'm an avid reader. I'm a bookworm. So unfortunately, the best thing I could recommend is Transformational Security Awareness. And that book doesn't cover any of the studies that I showed up here. It does talk briefly about there's something called the knowledge attitude behavior gap, but he doesn't talk about any studies that prove that. So the last poster also violates that don't overwhelm with information. The graphic design is an eye bleed. I totally agree that the graphic design is an eye bleed, and it has 99, surprisingly, I think, as far as I recall, 99 recommendations to do. And not only the recommendations are abstract, it's not concrete in any way, and it doesn't tell people how they can apply these practices in their lives. So it's 100% useless. It has no meaning, and that's why the only people who circulated are security professionals like myself, because it's because of there's something in psychology called the curse of knowledge. Curse of knowledge is that once you know a lot of information, you don't really unable to have empathy, understand how is it like to put yourself in the beginner's shoes. And there was a study on this on the curse of knowledge. Is that do we still have some time, Marta?
Yeah, I'll stay
Okay, great.
as long as you need.
This study was about it's called tappers and listeners. They asked a group of people that guess a song in your head and then start tapping it on the table. But don't tell what the song is. Don't move your mouth, and tap it on the table. And there's a group of listeners, and those listeners will try to guess what type of song that you're trying to tap out. Now the tappers, they asked them, guess what percent of the listeners would guess your song. They said 50%, but in reality, it was the listeners only were able to guess 1% of the songs they tapped. That is because there's a song ringing in their head that people cannot listen to. And that's the same thing. That's an analogy with security awareness, with a security professional. There's something singing in their heads that the other end of people who the other end of the spectrum do not understand what you're talking about. And this is the issue with curse of knowledge. The more information that we know, we tend to forget how is it like to become a beginner. And like you mentioned, the last poster is an eye bleach. It's definitely an eye bleach, and unfortunately, that is one of the most circulated posters on LinkedIn. So, do we still have any other questions, Marta?
Looks like you have answered them all. Oh, one more. Would you agree that the overuse of acronyms in cybersecurity is antithetical to clear communications and training?
Yes, actually, Perry Carpenter does say the same thing, recommendation, avoid using technical terminologies in your security awareness, any kind of jargon. And I totally agree with that. Jargon, including acronyms, and overuse of these type of terminologies will really would discourage people from reading yours or engaging with your campaign. If you're talking about cybersecurity in general, like for technical, from peer-to-peer cybersecurity professionals talking to each other, maybe acronyms will help to make a shortcut use of terminologies, and not to, instead of saying the whole terminology, if the other end understands it and knows what that means, sure, why not? But when it comes to education or changing people's behavior, I will avoid that. Absolutely. And one more comment regarding the CI triad. This is just a personal thing. I hope nobody would hate me regarding that. The CI triad, if I see anyone, is not real. It's based on pop culture security. It's not founded on something that's related to security, scientific studies, or research studies in security. It's something. It's a culture that people circulate. So I'm not sure why a lot of security professionals and books are referencing the CI triad, even if it's a technical book.
Okay.
So I hope I answered everybody's questions. And thank you all for joining.
All right, thank you so much, Abdul.
Right.
This was a great presentation. Like so much amazing content, and the visuals are just stunning.
Thank you so much.
So frequently asked question is, will the slides or the webinar be recorded? And yes, it is. It will be uploaded to our website in a few days. That's csnp.org. So I hope you weren't taking notes, because you don't need to. We got some great events coming up this summer, including trivia, another webinar, a more career-focused webinar where you get to vote on the topic. So in the chat, I put the SurveyMonkey link if you would like to grab that. We also have trivia, backdoors and breaches card games, and we'll have a lot of great blogs and cybersecurity awareness, cyber safety programs up and running. So whether you want to follow us on LinkedIn, our website, Meetup, Twitter, we have a lot of social media. So again, thank you so much, Abdul, for this amazing webinar.
I hope everybody has learned something today. And thank you so much, everybody, for attending. And I hope you enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.